The revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso, who's not just confronting France's legacy of control, but exposing a much darker web of Western interference that stretches across the entire continent. This isn't just about diplomacy. It's not just about politics. It's about sovereignty, about identity, and about a rising Africa that refuses to be silenced any longer. Traoré's message is clear. Africa is not a colony. Africa is not a playground for foreign powers. Africa is rising, and it's doing so on its own terms. From the collapse of French influence to the unmasking of global institutions that profit off African poverty, this story reaches far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. This episode is not for the faint of heart, it's for the bold, for those tired of the lies, for those ready to see Africa not as a victim, but as a force. Every era is defined by its heroes, figures who rise not because they seek power, but because history demands their courage. For Burkina Faso, and increasingly for all of Africa, that figure is Captain Ibrahim Traoré. To understand the fire sweeping across the continent today, you must first understand the man who lit the flame. Ibrahim Traoré is not just a military officer, he is the embodiment of a people's rage turned into purpose. Born in the heart of West Africa, Traoré rose from humble beginnings, just like millions of African youths who walk dusty roads with dreams in their eyes and determination in their hearts. But while many are taught to accept the status quo, to be quiet, to wait for foreign solutions, Traoré chose a different path. He chose to fight back, not just against bullets or bombs, but against an entire system built to suppress Africa's soul. When he led the coup in September 2022, it was not a grab for glory. It was an act of rebellion against betrayal. The previous leaders, backed by foreign interests, had promised protection but delivered dependency. They said they would end terrorism, yet watched it grow. Traoré knew that the enemy wasn't just within. It was sitting in boardrooms in Paris, in offices at the IMF, in diplomatic embassies whispering about democracy while fueling destabilization. In one bold move, this young captain reminded the world of something Africa had almost forgotten, that its destiny belongs to its own people. He stood before his nation and declared freedom, not as a distant hope, but as a right that must be seized. He didn't come with polished speeches or diplomatic pleasantries. He came with the truth. And truth, when spoken by the brave, shakes empires. His rise represents more than a political shift. It symbolizes a spiritual awakening. Traoré is the roaring lion in a generation tired of being silenced. His military uniform is not a costume of war, it's a symbol of resistance. He is not perfect, but he is real. And in a world full of puppets, the people chose the man who cuts the strings. Traoré is not just a man, he is a message that Africa's youth will no longer bow, that its leaders will no longer serve foreign masters, and that its nations will no longer sleep in chains. The lion has roared, and Africa is waking up. For over a century, France wore the mask of Africa's ally, pretending to be a guardian while draining the continent's lifeblood. Under the banner of development and diplomacy, it constructed an empire without walls, yet stronger than chains. Through its influence over currency, military presence, and political manipulation, France kept its former colonies in a chokehold, disguised as partnership. But in Burkina Faso, that illusion shattered, and leading the charge was the fearless Ibrahim Traoré. What we witnessed under Traoré's leadership was not merely a rejection of France's presence, it was a declaration of spiritual independence, a powerful blow against the last remnants of colonialism dressed in modern suits. France's grip wasn't just political, it was psychological. Through the CFA franc, France controlled the very pulse of West African economies. Through Operation Barkhane, it embedded its soldiers under the pretense of fighting terror, while chaos mysteriously grew. Through diplomacy, it kept African leaders quiet and compliant, but not anymore. When Traoré ordered the expulsion of French troops and terminated the military accord, the world didn't just witness a sovereign decision, it witnessed a revolution. French convoys rolled out under the eyes of cheering Burkinabe youth. French flags were lowered not by negotiation, but by demand. For the first time in generations, the people were no longer begging, they were commanding. and their voice, sharp and unrelenting, said, "Enough." Traoré understood what many before him feared to say out loud, that France had become a destabilizing force, not a stabilizing one, that behind every handshake was a hidden knife, and so he tore away the veil, exposing how terrorism had not shrunk under French protection, but spread like wildfire. He asked the unspoken question, why does instability follow the very nations that promised to stop it? And his people listened. His courage was contagious. Mali had already stood up. Now Burkina Faso had joined, and others were watching, ready. The dominoes were falling. The colonial castle, once thought indestructible, was crumbling. The collapse of France's grip wasn't just strategic, it was symbolic. It told every young African that no empire is too powerful to be challenged, and no system too entrenched to be uprooted. Traoré showed us that with vision and fearlessness, the oldest chains can be broken, and the oldest lies can be buried. France lost more than its bases in Burkina Faso. It lost its mask. It lost its myth. And in that loss, Africa found its voice again. France may have been the first to be unmasked, but Captain Ibrahim Traoré knew it was only a strand in a much larger web, a web spun by the collective hands of Western powers. For too long, Africa was not only colonized by nations, but also ensnared by systems. Systems designed not to uplift Africa, but to keep it permanently dependent, perpetually obedient. Traoré's real courage was not just in confronting a country, but in confronting an entire global order. The world saw Burkina Faso sever ties with France, but Traoré went deeper. He began to speak boldly about institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, those so-called saviors who appear with smiles and solutions, yet leave behind chains of debt and dependency. These organizations offer loans not to help, but to bind. They impose structural adjustment programs that force nations to cut healthcare, education, and local industries, just to repay debts they never truly own. And when Africa tries to breathe, these systems tighten their grip. Traoré exposed it all. He warned his people and the continent that the battle is not only on the ground, but also in the spreadsheets, in the trade agreements, in the handshakes behind closed doors. He revealed how Western tech giants hunger for Africa's minerals, cobalt, lithium, gold, sourced from our soil under the sun through sweat and blood. Yet the profits fill foreign banks, while African children remain barefoot. He challenged the silence, the complicity, and the economic theft disguised as globalization. Even more, Traoré pointed to the military presence of the United States through AFRICOM. He asked the simple question few dared to ask. Why does a foreign military have more bases on our land than schools for our children? These bases are not here to protect. They are here to monitor, to control, to suppress. They don't fight terrorism, they watch sovereignty like a hawk over prey. His voice became a mirror, forcing Africa to look at the truth, raw, unfiltered, unapologetic. The enemy is not just one country, it is a system that fears an awakened Africa. And that is why Traoré's defiance became so dangerous. Because once people see the web, they stop chasing flies, and they begin to burn the web itself. This was not just exposure, it was liberation. Traoré declared that Africa will no longer dance to a foreign tune, no longer measure success by Western metrics, no longer allow its dreams to be designed in Washington or Brussels. He stood tall and declared, Africa must be free, not just from France, but from the entire Western web. And that truth is setting fire to a continent long chained in silence. Something extraordinary is happening in Africa, something powerful, ancient, and unstoppable. It is not just political, it is spiritual. It is not just a movement, it is a rebirth. Across mountains and deserts, from the Sahel to the Cape, a forgotten fire is roaring back to life. Pan-African unity, once a dream whispered by visionaries like Kwame Nkrumah and Thomas Sankara, is no longer a hope of the past. It is becoming the heartbeat of the present. And Captain Ibrahim Traoré stands at the center of that awakening. In the bold moves taken by Burkina Faso, we have witnessed more than national pride. We have seen the stirring of a collective African soul. When Traoré spoke, the youth in Mali, Niger, Guinea, and even Congo listened. Because he didn't just speak for Burkina Faso. He spoke for a generation betrayed by borders that were drawn by colonizers and guarded by puppets. Traoré's message is clear. We are not Francophone, Anglophone, or Lusophone. We are Africans first, last, and forever. It is no coincidence that Mali and Niger followed suit, cutting colonial cords and seeking new paths of sovereignty. They didn't just take inspiration, they felt a brotherhood in resistance. Together they formed alliances not based on foreign interest, but on African solidarity. No longer are they asking Europe for aid. They are standing shoulder to shoulder, forming a new security pact, building new regional cooperation based on respect, not control. This is the foundation of the new Pan-Africanism. Unity forged not in words but in action. The flags may be different, but the struggle is the same. African youth are rising, no longer seduced by visa dreams and Western illusions. They are staying, fighting, building, and protecting their lands. Farmers are organizing. Students are protesting. Soldiers are defecting from foreign-trained commands to join people's revolutions. The air is electric with the energy of a people reclaiming their purpose. This is why the West fears Traoré, not because he holds power, but because he inspires others to claim theirs. Because he is proving that unity is not a myth, and that Pan-Africanism is not dead. It is breathing again in the hearts of millions. The African lion has roared, and other lions are waking. The days of divide and rule are ending. The dawn of unite and rise has begun. This is the new Africa, not waiting, not begging, not apologizing. It is uniting, and once united, nothing will stop it. Power never surrenders without a fight. And when the oppressed begin to rise, the oppressors don't disappear, they double down. The moment Captain Ibrahim Traoré and his allies across West Africa started dismantling the centuries-old scaffolding of colonial control, the West didn't applaud, it retaliated. And the weapons it used were not just bullets, they were far more insidious. Sanctions, smears, subversion. This is the new warfare of imperialism, silent, strategic, and savage. When Traoré expelled French forces, froze Western NGO operations, and called out foreign exploitation, it wasn't long before the international media machine went into overdrive. Suddenly he was labeled a military dictator, a threat to democracy, a populist radical. The same mouths that praised other coups when they served Western interests now cried foul. Why? Because this time, the coup wasn't for foreign investors. It was for the people. The first wave of attacks came in the form of sanctions, economic warfare disguised as policy. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger were suddenly isolated by ECOWAS, an organization long compromised by Western influence. Financial aid was frozen, trade barriers were imposed, development support was halted. They thought this would break the people. They thought hunger would silence the movement. But the people stood firmer. They knew. These sanctions are not punishment for injustice. They are punishment for resistance. Then came the smears, carefully planted stories in Western outlets. They painted Traoré as reckless, anti-West, and dangerous. They called the Pan-African Alliance a destabilizing force, but the truth was plain for all who had eyes. It is not Africa destabilizing itself. It is the West destabilizing Africa because it can no longer control it. They fear a continent that thinks for itself, governs itself, and builds for itself. And when that didn't work, the most dangerous weapon was unleashed: subversion, covert operations, intelligence manipulations, the fostering of internal unrest, fake protests, paid influencers, disinformation campaigns flooding social media to divide the people from their leaders. It's a playbook Africa has seen before, used in Libya, in Congo, in Zimbabwe. The strategy is always the same: sow confusion, fracture unity, and sabotage sovereignty from within. But this time, it's not working like it used to, because now the people are aware. They see the patterns, they know the tricks, and more importantly, they trust their sons like Traoré more than they trust foreign tongues promising peace. Let the West bring its backlash. Let the sanctions fall. Let the smears fly. Africa is no longer asleep. It is rising, and it cannot be silenced. Not with starvation, not with lies and not with fear. This is not just about one man. It's not just about one country. It's not even just about one enemy. This is about the soul of a continent reclaiming its future, about a people who for too long were told they were powerless, now standing tall to write their own destiny. This is the people's movement, a revolution not born in boardrooms, not funded by outsiders, not orchestrated from the shadows, but ignited in the hearts of everyday Africans who are tired of kneeling before thrones they never built. Ibrahim Traoré may have struck the match, but it is the people who are feeding the fire. The youth in Ouagadougou, Bamako, Niamey, they march not with fear, but with pride. Farmers, teachers, artists, soldiers, they are rising together, hand in hand, voice with voice. For the first time in generations, Africans are not looking outside for answers. They are looking within. They are realizing that liberation will not come from aid. It will come from action. It will come from unity. It will come from the truth. In the streets, murals of Thomas Sankara are painted anew. Sankara once said, "You cannot carry out fundamental change without a certain amount of madness." That madness is here again. Not the madness of chaos, but the madness of courage. The kind of courage that says, we will grow our own food. We will defend our own borders. We will teach our own children our true history. We will lead ourselves. Women are at the forefront, nurturing this revolution with the same strength they use to carry nations on their backs. Elders are remembering the old wisdoms and passing them to the youth. The drums of Africa are beating again, not to entertain, but to awaken. Every beat says, this is our land. This is our time. The West may try to bribe leaders, to manipulate narratives, to sow division. But the spirit that has been awakened cannot be put back in chains. Not this time. The people have seen through the illusion. They know now that freedom is not given, it is taken, and they are taking it. This is more than a moment. It is a movement. The people's movement. It is loud, it is fierce, it is unstoppable, and it is just beginning. From Cape Town to Cairo, from Dakar to Dar es Salaam, Africa is rising, not in protest, but in purpose. The chains are broken, the eyes are open, and the future is African. You've just witnessed the unveiling of truths many have tried to hide, how the legacy of colonialism still casts shadows across Africa, and how brave leaders like Ibrahim Traoré are breaking those chains with unstoppable courage. This is more than a story, it's a call to action. Now the question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you let these truths fade into silence? Or will you become part of the movement that stands with Africa's rising voice? Share this video, speak up, and spread awareness. The power to change the future lies in the hands of those who refuse to stay silent. Africa is no longer waiting. It's rising, reclaiming its destiny, and rewriting history. And you, yes, you, can be part of that revolution.